What brought you to this video? That's my first question. You obviously clicked on it, maybe you're the first, second, third person. Maybe you've had a kundalini awakening, maybe you're going through your own spiritual process, so-called spiritual process. I wanted to share a big block for me for a long time. I'm following my kundalini awakening, very intense process that began a few years ago. I found a lot of the blocks that I would find myself in, the potholes that I would end up in for prolonged periods before a teacher found me. It's how to be the right way to be, like spiritual. What make all my spiritual choices now? I can't be this regular guy anymore, right? And that can't happen now. I'm special. I've had this kundalini awakening, and I have these clairvoyant seeings, and I can hear thoughts, and all these wonderful party tricks the ego would love to brag about, and would also love to guilt trip me about. So whenever I would feel angry or would align with something that was deemed so-called unspiritual, such as anger, losing my temper, and such, of course the shaming and the inner critic would be ready to pounce, and boy did it pounce. My inner critic is a beast. Like many, is when it's fed, it's a pattern and it's a habit, and when it's fed, it grows in strength. Since I decided to choose a different way and to create some different neural pathways. But what I wanted to share was there is no difference between emotions are sensations. What is the worst thing that's going to happen to you? Ask yourself this. What is the worst thing that's going to happen right now? What is the worst thing that's going to happen if I do this, if I do that, if I stand up to this person, or if I choose to do this or choose that? Something you're scared about, or you're resisting. You're going to feel a sensation. That's all that's going to happen. And then of course there's going to be a story that goes with that sensation. And the suffering starts when there's an identification with the picture, the thoughts, the story, and the sensation. Ultimately, sensation is as it is. If you don't want suffering from a thought, from anger, sensation, or anything else that you maybe have resistance to, if you allow the feeling, if the feeling is allowed to be there with no judgment, and it's just allowed to move, the energy, there'll be no thoughts, and it will transform. So anger, for example, anger is the same. There is no difference between anger and compassion. The only thing that's different about it is our relationship to the sensation. As an example, when anger is allowed, say in the belly, anger is allowed, someone cuts you up on the road, or an ex-wife shaming you or whatever, there's a contraction. Vroom. It's not allowed, it's judged straight away. There's fear from it, or there's a dislike about it. Anger is bad, that's not spiritual. Vroom, shoot straight up to the thought. And the thought begins, and a big story and a big process will start. And then identification will happen. And then the idea of suffering will happen. If the emotion is allowed, if it's allowed to move, because it's just energy, and energy just wants to be allowed to move. It's not, and it can't move when it's suppressed, judged, or when we try to do something with it. So if we act it out. So there's an acting out, and there's an acting in. So if you could turn it inwards, rumination, oh, I should have said this, I should have said that. That's still a doing. Same as identifying with having to set a boundary to make myself feel better, to get rid of this anger. Both are ways of avoiding anger. Both are ways of suppressing anger. Anger is the example being used here apparently, so we'll go with that. If an anger is allowed, sensation, the curiosity is there rather than judgment. The curiosity is here. Curiosity could look like, what does this feel like? Is it a tingle? Is it like butterflies? What colour is it? Is there a colour? What shape is it? Try and trace the sensation in your mind. Trace the shape. How deep in does it go? How far into your gut does it feel like it's going? Everything, if allowed, is transformed. Everything. Everything. It's not about having a polished ego and not feeling anger and not acting in a certain way. If everything is allowed, there is no suffering from what I've seen. Suffering is an idea, it's a man-made idea that comes about from a relationship to a thought or a feeling. But as the example that's being used with anger, when this is allowed, eventually, when it can be allowed without turning it in to yourself or having to act it out, it transforms into something else. Compassion is one word you could be used to describe. Or anger can anger, there's no such thing as anger. From what I've seen, there is no such thing as anger. It's power that's not being allowed to move. This is anger. Power is needed. Power is needed to embody our realizations. And if power is judged, if there is a fear about it, if it's judged in any way, it becomes something we will then call anger, which is often something that we don't want to face or we don't want to experience. And in that suppression, in that judgment, the sensation is wanting to move, which is power, or it's wanting to just move, is being, and the heart will close and it will straight up to the head. We're not allowed to move down here, so let's see if we can play the story out and feel better with lots of different thoughts and stories and ideas about what I should do and how I should be. And in that instance, everything is God, because without anger, there's no compassion, surely. Compassion is just anger that's been allowed, or should I say, compassion is just power that's been allowed. Power that's not allowed becomes anger, this idea of anger we have, that we mustn't have if we're spiritual or whatever. But if power is allowed, or anger, whichever word resonates with you, it becomes something else. This is the same for everything. In my experience so far, this is the same for everything. Everything. Give permission for all feelings to arise. Give permission for everything to come up, even resistance. Even resistance to feelings. Let it all come up. That's all that's needed. It's needed because it's here, right? So allow it. Take a leap of faith and give permission for everything to be as it is and for you to be as you are. There is nothing else to do. You could call this relaxing or surrender. Fear, anger. Oh, someone so unspiritual has just cut me up and swore at me. You pissed off about that? Okay? Oh, I'm pissed off. I'm angry about this. I feel this in my belly. Yeah, okay. Maybe I'm not so spiritual, so-called spiritual. Okay. Maybe I'm going to go backwards in my journey. Or whatever the story might be. Okay, I'll go backwards. If that's what's going to happen, that's going to happen. If you're watching this video, there's an invitation for you to meet that level of surrender. And I feel that whoever's come across these would be ready to hear them. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here listening to this 9 minutes in. So perhaps on some level, you're needing to hear this. And everything that's being said is not being said by Mikey. It's this person here. It's flowing through this form as Mikey, but it's flowing almost as a transmission and a seed that's planted. And it might not make sense entirely now, or it might just sort of resonate or tickle your fancy now. There's nothing to do with it, nothing to do with any of this. Just hear it, relax. It will grow on its own. These seeds just need a bit of watering, and the watering can look like relaxing, surrendering, allowing, not doing. Any doing will divert any doing will be a block. But that's not to say doing is wrong, because much like anger, when doing is allowed, even doing is allowed, that also transforms into something else. The invitation is to allow everything as you are in this moment. Allow everything, nothing to be left behind, nothing to be excluded, everything. Accept all parts of yourself, the abuser part, the murderer, the angry part, the selfish part, the worthless loser part. In my experience, when all of these ideas, sensations, belief systems are allowed, that any transformation takes place. This is the way of Tantra. Acceptance. It's not doing, not suppression. Accepting yourself totally. Well, if you've watched this far and you resonate with this video or the words that you're hearing, feel free to get in touch for some support, guidance in your own journey. If you have any questions, I'll put my email in the description box below. Feel free to get in touch because another thing, a belief I had for a long time is I needed to do this on my own, which is impossible. Yes, we all need support in any form, in any shape. So even if you don't get in touch, find the support for you, someone who resonates with you, and follow your heart. Just go with it, whether it be me or not. It doesn't matter who we all need support. We all need guidance on this journey, on this path. Thanks for watching. Much love.